Scripture reading today is from the 60th chapter of Isaiah, the first through the 6th verses. Arise, shine, your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. For darkness shall cover the earth, and thick darkness the peoples. But the Lord will arise upon you, and his glory will appear over you. Nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn. Lift up your eyes and look around. They all gather together. They come to you. Your sons shall come from far away, and your daughters shall be carried on their nurses' arms. Then you shall see and be radiant. Your heart shall thrill and rejoice, because the abundance of the sea shall be brought to you. The wealth of the nations shall come to you. A multitude of camels shall cover you, the young camels of Midian and Ephraim. All those from Sheba shall come. They shall bring gold and frankincense, and shall proclaim the praise of the Lord. And from Matthew, the 2nd chapter, comes the story of the kings. In the time of Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." And King Herod heard this. He was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he inquired of them, "Where is the Messiah? Where was the Messiah to be born?" And they told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea. For so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star appeared. And then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." And when they heard the king, they set out. And there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. And when they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So I'm coming down for a minute because I want to talk to Mr. Fry, the chief architect of the 250th Wheeling celebration. We had the job nobody wanted, sucker. Last night we had the 12th night ball, and it was the kickoff of the 250th Wheeling celebration. And where did the idea come to call it the 12th night ball?
From my little pea brain.
From your little pea brain. You must be a marvelously liturgically trained Presbyterian then.
I was an elder at Fourth.
You were an elder at Fourth, that's right. And an elder here, yeah, don't forget that.
Yes, all that.
So why is it 12th night, though?
Well, all you heathens already know this, that as we heard from Erica in Scripture, the 12th night Epiphany is the 12th day of Christmas, remember? On the first day of Christmas, and you go to all 12, and lords are leaping, and drums are drumming, and all that. So
5 golden rings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, in medieval times, the eve of Epiphany was celebrated with what was called a mass, or a party. So this is not a new idea. It's just an idea that hasn't been used in a long time. So with Wheeling's founding in the 18th century, I thought, January 5th, nothing's going on except the basketball tournament. And that doesn't have to be something you go to on 12th night. And we're not competing with the Viennese ball, right? There's nothing going on. And people in Wheeling, do I need to tell you, love to get dressed up and go to a party. We had over 200 people. We sold out on Thursday. I can't believe the creativity and the seriousness with which many people took the costume assignment. Needless to say, I wore a uniform. That was easy. Michael was a Wheeling steel worker with a hard hat. That's going to knock people out. And we had everyone from Ebenezer and Betty Zane to Alma Henderson, for those of you who know who she was. It was hilarious. It was point and laugh for about an hour. And it was very well received. I think the big takeaway, and thank you for asking, Wheeling Heritage, the City of Wheeling, the Wheeling, Ohio County Convention and Visitors Bureau have teamed up to fund a position that Travis Henline is starting on the 14th to explore the creation of a Wheeling History Museum, which will be the Wheeling 250 leave behind for future generations. Long overdue, something that has been talked about for a long time, but we need somebody with the expertise funded to actually make the thing. So I'm most excited about that. So for all of you who sent checks, and for those of you who attended and couldn't for whatever reason, I do appreciate the support because I have a lot of it. And I was certainly not the only person involved in this. We had a great ball committee, and as I said last night in my remarks, when you want something done well, you get a group of smart women and you get out of the way. And that's what happened with all of this. So,
there you go.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Excellent. So, 12th night is as a result of the 12 days of Christmas. Now, 12 days of Christmas, this is because Christmas, we've missed this. We think Christmas is a day, but liturgically speaking, Christmas is designed to be a season. So Christmas actually should start on December 25th and go all the way till 12th night on January 5th. Then on January 6th, we change to Epiphany. And Epiphany is my favorite liturgical season. I usually throw a big party on Epiphany. We have King's Cake, which is a cake that's designed so that it has inside of it either a bead or a little baby Jesus. And whoever gets the piece of cake with the king in it is the king or queen of the ball for the night. And the children, actually at Caddis last year, we had everybody line their shoes up and everybody got a little gift in their shoes to take home with them on Epiphany, because that's part of the tradition. Epiphany and we don't know this in American culture. We have lost sight of that. We think that Christmas starts on Black Friday and goes through until about the evening of December 24th when we open our gifts, and then it's done. But historically, that's not been the way it is. And around the world, they understand that, and particularly because we have such good Presbyterian connections in Puerto Rico, where the Hispanic culture is big about Epiphany. So it would not be uncommon for a Puerto Rican kid to not get gifts on December 25th, but instead to get gifts on Epiphany. And one of the traditions is that you fill a shoebox full of straw or hay. You put some carrots in there for the camels. And just in the same way that, for example, our tooth fairy takes your tooth and leaves you a gift, or Santa takes the cookies and leaves you a gift, the kings and the camels take the straw and the carrots and they leave gift. So Epiphany is a really huge celebration, celebrated much better around the world than it is in the American church. But understand that the notion of Epiphany is that for 12 days, starting at Christmas time, the light of Jesus Christ has come to us and come to the world, and we celebrate it for 12 days in the church. And medievally, they really did this well, and they had, they'd have turkey legs and wassail and all kinds of really good parties, and that's where the notion of caroling came from, because you went from house to house, and as you went, you ate your way through until you were in a coma when you were done or whatever, and celebrated. You celebrated because the light of Christ had come to you. But at Epiphany, the light of Christ, and every service that I've done with this, we pick up this candle and we take it out. And oftentimes we have a Christmas tree that we burn, and if you've ever seen a live tree burn, you won't forget seeing it. Because the light of Christ then comes from the church and goes out into the world at Epiphany. This is the time when we are supposed to take that light and share it with others in the world. Now, how does that make sense, given the fact that this is the time that the kings came to the baby? Who were the kings, first of all? First of all, how many kings were there? It just says wise men in the text. Historically, we think there are 3 because there were 3 gifts, and then tradition gave them 3 names. And sometimes tradition even says that one came from the Far East, and one came from the Middle East, and one came from Africa, so they were coming from all the world to worship the king. But that's tradition. Scripture just says there were wise men. What else do we know about them? We likely know about them that they were either Zoroastrian, which is its own kind of unusual religion, that likes to use, how should we say this, substances to help you go into another plane so that you might worship better. In other words, they smoked a lot of weed. They were either Zoroastrianism or they were, I want to get this right, astronomers. Not astrologers, not people who studied stars, but astronomers. People who put their faith in stars. Anybody read their horoscope this morning? Do you do that for fun, or do you do that because you place your life and your bets on what that's going to say about you? If it says don't walk across the street that day, do you stay home? That's the difference, right? These were people who, if it said don't walk across the street, literally would not walk across the street, because they put their faith, their entire religion was based on that horoscope. Okay? Now, the other thing we have to understand in historical context for the people we're talking about is there were only 2 kinds of people in their world. There were Jews and there were not Jews. When they go to Herod, when Herod goes and says, "Where's this king of the Jews supposed to be born?" He's going to the Jews. And they can tell him exactly. They know exactly. Because the prophets have told them. Herod was not Jew. Right? And he says he's going to the Jews to figure out what he needs to know about this guy who might take over his reign. How strange is it that in a world where the king is to be king of the Jews, and in a world where we only have 2 kinds of people, Jews and not Jews, one of the groups of people that are coming to Jesus' cradle are not Jews. Granted, they got there perhaps in an unusual way, following a religion that follows the stars and puts its fate in what we might call silly things. But ultimately, these men traveled for what could have been a period of up to 2 years to follow. I'll tell you how I know that later. To follow the Christ child. To find the King of the Jews. To find the one whose star was in the sky. The light of Christ was with the people of God and now has gone out into the world to attract all people to God's Son. See, for me, the lesson of the three kings is that there is room at the cradle of Christ, even for the people we think might not belong there. In the 33 years that Jesus lived on earth, it did not change in the mind of the Jews that there were two kinds of people, Jews and not Jews. And it is also significant that at Jesus' cross, at the foot of Jesus' cross, there were not Jews. There were Gentile people, people who some thought shouldn't belong there, worshiping the King of the Jews, the Messiah, the Christ of God. In one instance, it was a star that attracted those people to the Christ. In other instance, it was the cross. But nonetheless, there is room in Jesus' world for those whom others think might not belong to worship the Christ. So I ask you, is there room here in the heart of God's people for those whom we think might not belong to worship the Christ? Thanks be to God for Epiphany and the opportunity to take the light of Christ out into the world. May we be God's faithful servants in doing so. Amen.